So what about music that makes us people fall so in love with it? The artists behind it, the festivals, bringing family and friends together, make us feel good, right? Or sad? Will the song remind you of the first time you were in love and a time you were mourning over deceased relatives? Or that one album you could just play with no skills all on a long road trip? It was just that damn good. Gives you ultimate vibes on a higher vibration. Some of us like to enhance our experiences with drugs to give us everything out of a moment in a song, raising vibrations, pleasing our electromagnetic waves to our eardrums. The human body is very unique because it's so reactive. Our five senses are our makeup. So what all of this mean? It's the sound. The sound of music gives us everything. It motivates, it uplifts, it molds us. It gives us our distinct personas, subconsciously moving us, one instrument, one beat, one song at a time. So let's take a trip down memory lane and go back, all the way back to 1877 when Thomas Edison invented the phonograph.
Hello, hello, hello. Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow.
The playback medium was a cylinder made of tinfoil in shape. And later on, Emil Berliner changed that in 1888 by creating a flat disc to be on what's called the gramophone. Over a period through several decades, when listening to music and sound playback, these records became standardized at a speed of approximately 78 RPM and in sizes of 10 and 12 inches in diameter. The largest one usually for a long play of classical music. Shout out to Beethoven for that, keeping the functions going back then. So let's jump forward into the 20th century. Vinyl records were first introduced in 1930 by RCA Records. These records were noted for their low quality playback in 1931. The RCA Victor Company introduced an early version of the long playing record, but ultimately it failed to catch on because all but dead by 1933. The Great Depression and World War II was placed in pause to this invention to be recognized. I mean, who's worried about record players when you're jobless, your wife left you, and half the world got beef with each other? After several years later in research, in March 1949, RCA Victor introduced his own microgrove vinyl system. The 7-inch disc that played at a set 45 RPM that became normalized for record labels to use for a few years. In 1952, the extended play 45, which became known as the EP, were introduced to replace those large boxes of 45.
Collected records when I was a kid. I actually had a record player in my car back in the 50s when nobody had one of those.
But once again, those EPs really sparked as far as the physical records. Even though some Elvis Presley EPs were huge sellers in 1956, most labels phased out of EP releases by the earliest 1960s. Those Capitol released as Beatles EPs in 1965, and RCA issued one last Elvis Presley EP in 1967. So when those cool kids went to the diner after school, went to the jukebox and jammed out to their favorite tunes. Thus far, you can see how vinyl records were on anyone's top of their Christmas list, but not until the next innovation. The next innovation in records was the stereo disc.